You'll be going there on the stage. So good morning to all of you. I'm sure you're looking forward to this excellent session. In some of our countries, we don't have hospitals for sarcoma treatment. In some other countries, we have hospitals, but we don't know about specialized center. And so we are all in different stages of development. Roger, our board member, is extremely experienced and knows a lot about it. In fact, his paper is going to be published. So may I request Roger to please talk to us about the specialized sarcoma centers and how we all can benefit from it.
Yes, I'm sorry, I should have got myself vertical a bit quicker. Sorry about that. Before I start, I'd just like to welcome a newcomer into the conference today, someone who's not been with us before, but is very special to me because I've been working with him for the last few years, helping him develop a clinical trial, which opened only last month. And I don't how many patients do you have who you now entered, Kenny? Five, well done. But Kenny Rankin, who's a surgeon from Newcastle in the UK and is running a surgical clinical trial in sarcoma. So if you want to know more about that, contact him in the next break. Thank you for coming, Kenny. Delighted to see you. As Vandana said, this question, what is a sarcoma specialist centre, has been at the forefront of my mind for the last couple of years. You will recall that last year in Dublin, we did a session for an hour and a half with some incredibly valuable contributions from the community here and from our professional colleagues who were with us then. That paper moved on. It started with the undisputed statement that sarcoma should be treated by experts in specialist centres. However, specialist centre or expert centre has never been defined. It's always been implied, and the statement has been used explicitly, but never defined. And that's made it difficult for patients and families to understand the level of expert care they can and should expect. And it also means that there are no guidelines for a hospital or a multidisciplinary team or a healthcare system wanting an expert centre or wanting to describe itself as an expert centre. So the progress we've been through is that Denise and I started work on developing a discussion paper which came out in the spring of last year. We had the discussion at this conference in May, a draft paper which went to consultation and had a fairly wide distribution in the summer of last year, with a redraft following that consultation. We had presented an abstract to CETOS, which they accepted, and the conclusions that we were drawing in that paper were discussed at CETOS in November in Dublin. The paper was finalised in February and submitted at the start of this month. And this morning, I have had the peer review comments back from 2 of 3 reviewers, basically saying the paper should be accepted, seeking some minor alterations which won't be a problem. In fact, they will help emphasize particular issues which the paper brings out. So currently awaiting review at the moment, but almost certain now to be accepted for publication later this month or sometime during May. Keep in the back of your mind as I talk that the primary objective that we defined at this conference last year was that a specialist centre should be able to deliver an accurate diagnosis and deliver safe, high-quality treatment as close to home as is practicable. It's obviously very big statements, very overarching, and there's lots of detail in how we explore that. So our priorities is that it must be patient-centred. Amongst the issues that we've had to consider, and these were emphasised in a paper from Canada and Australia some 5-6 years ago, that single-site expertise is not the only valid model. In fact, when you start to look at it on a worldwide basis, single-site expertise is actually only available to about 9% of the world population. Network provision is more common, is probably more challenging to implement, although that's probably arguable, and that's available probably to about another 8 or 9% of the world population. So some sort of sarcoma expertise is only available to 16 or 17% of the world's population. This means, of course, that anything we put forward must not be geographically specific. We can recognise that Europe and the USA are perhaps ahead, and that's where we find most of the single-site expertise. But we have to look at much bigger, much wider than that. We've got to provide purpose, incentives, and targets for everyone so that the other 83% of the world population can get access to expertise, and everyone has a development pathway so that we're not just focusing on parts of the world like Africa or South America or Southeast Asia. We're focusing on every expert centre. We're focusing on better treatment for all patients. What we put forward has got to be flexible because local priorities will always exist. And the example I like to use here to illustrate local priorities is that in much of Europe, we now have sarcoma specialist nurses working within our centres. Not everywhere in Europe, but in much of Europe. Almost impossible in most of the USA at the moment. It's beginning to happen, I believe, in 1 or 2 places, but it just doesn't exist. The budgets aren't there. But we've also discovered that in some parts of the world, nursing practice, professional nursing practice, doesn't allow it to exist. So even if we recommend to a specialist centre in some of these places that specialist nurses are a desirable feature of a specialist centre, it won't happen. We can be a power for change, hopefully, and local advocacy can help it change, but we have to recognise that that's a situation that exists in some countries. Underpinning it all, we are in a world of evidence-based medicine. So we need to put forward an evidence base to support what we're saying about what a sarcoma specialist centre is. Well, after a lot of thinking, we're proposing the term a sarcoma intelligent specialist network as the overarching term that we want people to adopt and use to identify where specialist care and treatment is available. Now, short 4 words, and the professional article which is looking for publication at the moment is something in excess of 6,000 words. So I've now got to try and summarise that 6,000 words in 5 minutes or so. But I will give you a reference where you can download the preprint at the moment of the article. It is available to download. So what we're proposing is essentially a pathway. The Sarcoma Intelligence Specialist Network is a pathway to providing patient benefit. And let me say at the outset that in much of Europe, most of the centres that we know of and that we recognise will meet the core principles that we're putting forward. Same applies in much of America, much of Canada, Australia, and other places in the world. So the entry point, the core principles, are well established and well recognised. I'll go into them in a moment. Those core principles are supported by what we've finally decided to call recommendations. And these will underpin plans for development. And they will represent areas where policy and policymakers can be involved and hopefully provide the resources which allow centres to develop from the underlying core principles. And the document offers broad guidance. It's not a formula. It's not a template. It's guidance. As I said, in Europe and USA, many centres will qualify. Many of them are single site. Many of them will develop further. And as we've seen in the UK, we defined single centres some 15 years ago. But some of them have evolved as networks already because they've developed outlying provision closer to people's homes for elements of the treatment pathway which can be delivered closer to people's homes, such as imaging or radiotherapy or the delivery of chemotherapy, so that travel into a distant centre isn't always necessary. As I said, in the rest of the world, we have fewer centres and we have more networks, but we also have a lot of advocates seeking change, and that is what I am hoping that this paper will help empower. It will give you tools that you can use when you're talking with policymakers, when you're talking with funders, and when you're talking with your specialist doctors. So, if we're putting forward something like this, which is obviously going to need some form of accreditation, how do we do it? Well, there's no way we can. It's impossible. We don't have the resources. So this has to be a self-appraisal approach. And that, of course, requires honesty. But in addition, what we would like to see is patient involvement in the appraisal process. That's very clear and very specific in the paper, that a unit, a multidisciplinary team, seeking to take on this kind of branding, this accreditation as a sarcoma intelligence specialist network, we're looking for them to involve patients in that accreditation process. Now, these are the three core principles that are on our checklist. The treatment and care of all patients should be through a multidisciplinary team which meets on a regular basis. So we're not talking about a multidisciplinary team of maybe 5, 6, 8 doctors spread across a geographical range. We're talking about a multidisciplinary team of 5, 6, or 8 doctors spread across a geographical range, but meeting to discuss patients, so that there are interactions between surgeons and radiotherapists. There are interactions between medical oncologists and radiotherapists and surgeons. We get the benefit of expertise from everybody who's involved. It is absolutely fundamental And I'm grateful to the work that the Sarcoma Foundation of America has done in this area already. But imaging modalities must be available, with MRI ideally in there. MRI is most informative for surgeons. Generally speaking, it's more informative than CT. CT has its importance, its value, particularly in looking for distant metastases, but the surgeon looking at primary tumours finds the MRI most valuable. And of course, the actual diagnosis, we know, relies on a specialist pathologist. You know, Professor Eva Waldelman's talk yesterday was, really valuable, I think, in bringing that home to everyone, how important specialist pathology is in this story for every single patient. If the team, let's call it that at the moment, can actually honestly say it meets all of those three core principles, we would like it to adopt the Sarcoma Intelligence Specialist Network as a logo, as a branding, if you like. And that way we will get to know, by looking at, and hopefully by being informed by them, who is actually the specialist network, not who just thinks they might be and conveniently uses the term. We want to see those three principles ticked. In fact, the way we've done ticking in this paper is by putting green boxes into the squares on the right, as opposed to red or yellow, which have a different meaning. The key features which support that, recommendations if you like, are run to, I forget how many of them there are, I think there are 16 that follow. And you'll see that there, sarcoma specialist nurses is the third one down there. We know that that box will be, in some countries, will be red, because it has to be, because the professional standards that exist in that country don't allow it to happen. We would like that to change, because we know the value, I personally know the value, that specialist sarcoma nurses bring to the treatment of the patient, but we've just got to be realistic, we've got to be pragmatic. So that's an ambition for some people, and can only be an ambition. But others in there might be yellow rather than green, because we're working on it. We're nearly there. We think we're 65, 75% of the way there, but we can't honestly say we deliver everything that that means or implies. And that's the way we want a team to look at these recommendations, so that it can go through them one by one and score them red, yellow, or green. And these are some more of them. I'll just let you have a quick scan read without me talking for a moment or two. And here's a few more. And those of you that were in the discussion last year will no doubt be reminded of that discussion when you read some of these, because some of these recommendations stem directly from what people were saying last year. Now, there's a checklist. It actually looks slightly different from this in the published paper, but is essentially the same. So that is the entry point to the pathway. tick those 3 boxes at the top, the 3 green core principles, gets you onto the pathway. And when you're on the pathway, you might be scoring things like that, so that you've got a couple of reds, because you can't do that for really good underlying reasons. And the yellow ones, you're working on it. You're not there yet. You hope to be there soon. Maybe it's a couple of years before you can get to green, but you're looking at it. And periodically you would reassess together, and hopefully reassess with patient involvement, so you know where you are and you know how far down this pathway you've travelled. So, where are we with the paper? Well, as I've told you, it's been submitted to Cancers, which is a journal which SPAGN has published with before. It's available as a preprint. Your link is there if you want to follow it. It's currently in peer review, but as I said, we've had the reports of 2 reviewers back seeking some quite minor, and I would point out valuable, additions into the paper, and very hopeful that we'll have a finished review and be published fairly soon now. So what are the next steps for us? Because seeking publication is what establishes our work within the medical literature as evidence. We believe that publication will aid validity, so that this will become a document which can be quoted when you seek policy change with governments or with healthcare systems, or with funders of different kinds, or even with your own specialist centres. That validity is important. We will be promoting this paper. We want it to gain support from established centres who meet the core principles. I'd like to see in the 6 months following the publication a whole crop of centres on their websites using that Intelligent Specialist Network logo, just to confirm to us that they've looked at the paper, they've looked at the checklist, they've started to work with it, they're using it. We want the wide world of sarcoma to recognise that this is the badge of specialism, that it anchors them in the wider world. And it's really important for us that those advocacy groups in the remoter parts of the world, that's patronising, I don't mean that, it's in those parts of the world which haven't yet succeeded in establishing specialist treatment, quite often don't even have specialist treatment for any cancers. We want to support those advocacy groups making the case for centre-based development, network-based development in their own countries. So what you can do, and I'd like you to do this please, is when we let you know that the article is published, I want you to respond on social media. It'll be promoted heavily on our social media. I'd like you to be doing the same, please. Link to the article on your website. If you want the logo, we can easily send it to you. We want you to use it. We want it to become familiar so that people know that where that logo is shown, there is expertise. Make sure your doctors know about it. If you have a national sarcoma group, ask them to promote it. Offer to talk about the concept of a specialist network at professional meetings. If you want some slides, we can help you. Ensure that your doctors are aware that your organisation supports this concept, the concept of the Sarcoma Intelligent Specialist Network. When your doctors, your specialists, come together and want to use the checklist, help them. Send someone in to work with them on the appraisal. Appraise them yourselves from a distance and tell them what your thoughts are about their capacity in meeting the standards expressed on the checklist. Use it as a tool for communication. And then, similarly, make sure that whoever funds the specialist centre, whether that's a hospital or a healthcare system, make them aware of the article and the availability of the branding so that they carry that branding idea forward to their specialist networks. You can play a really important part in making this work. Remember, it's not a rigid template. It's not a press-button formula. It is a guideline. It's a pathway. It can be adapted where local needs, unavoidable limitations apply. But the three core principles are at the heart of it. And the aim is always that we're looking for a swift, accurate diagnosis followed by treatment from a multidisciplinary team with sarcoma expertise. It is a pathway, and it has that essential starting point. So, Sarcoma Intelligent Specialist Networks. Over to you. We're nearly there with our bit. Well, our bit doesn't stop, our bit will continue. But over to you, all the organizations that are out there in individual countries, to see if you can make this work, and we can make this work together. So I shall be looking forward to getting your feedback in the coming months as to how this helps you. Thank you.
Roger, I have a couple of questions. One is that, do you want to sit and answer?
Right, I'm there.
Okay. In a country like India, which is so wide and vast, the treatment centers are limited. It's not everywhere that the centers are there. And you mentioned that there should be safe, high-quality treatments, and they should be nearer home. So, do you have any thoughts on how you propose to do that, or what type of suggestion would you like to give for that?
Well, again, I think as close to home as is practicable is the key point there. There are radiotherapy and there are imaging resources in a much wider selection of hospitals than are the actual specialist hospitals. And what I believe should be happening, and it may take time to happen, is that the specialist centre, if you like, the single hospital which sits at the heart of everything, will build a network of local centres some distance away, but closer to its population, so that chemotherapy can be delivered closer to home, radiotherapy can be delivered closer to home, follow-up can be delivered closer to home, obviously under guidance from the central multidisciplinary team, but nonetheless closer to home. The model has evolved in England from where we were 15 years ago when we set up 17 specialist centres. We've closed one of those centres because it didn't have sufficient numbers of patients. But equally, several of those centres, which were single-site hospitals, or maybe two hospitals in neighbouring towns working together, a number of those have actually built a surrounding network.
So it will be like a hub and spoke model. There's one
Yeah, that's
person.
right, a hub and spoke.
Yeah. So that
And
would,
perfectly valid.
yeah.
Yeah.
So that would be the best thing to be doing, right? And again, you said that the guidelines for the developers, that you have set up something. Will you be accommodating it to low middle income groups, or will they be open to change?
Well, I see this as a living document, although obviously the published document will be fixed in time because of the nature of journal publishing. But we will keep it as a living document so that and we can promote updates and indeed seek publication for updates if necessary. But I see it as a living document so that as we get feedback, it can change. And of course, some of the technology issues are going to change around us. Artificial intelligence is coming in, and we'll hear more about that later from Gerard's session in a few minutes' time. But there's also new technology coming in surgery. There's new drugs coming into the marketplace. So we need to keep a broad eye on these things and be able to modify the document as things progress.
And one last question from my side. You said it should be flexible to accommodate local priorities. So what is it that you envisage in that?
Well, budgets is always going to be the big game, isn't it?
Yeah.
How you get the money which enables you to do some of the things which are implied in the plan. So the key thing to start with is to be uncompromising about those three core principles. Then, having built that, you've got a focus to build on. You've got a focus of professionals who, they're going to be proud professionals. They're going to be working intelligently, because I believe that's the nature of what a multidisciplinary team does. It does work intelligently. That they will have a base built on patients. Part of what we're proposing in there is that there should be patient groups, so that we can see the individual centre, the individual network, creating the case, and hopefully a very powerful case, for getting the funding that it requires in order to travel that pathway, to go down the recommendations and build its expertise and the provision of service to patients.
So do you have anything particular in mind for patient advocates?
Oh, there's not particular ideas in there, because I don't think patient advocates are ever short of ideas. I think that's been quite evident, here over the last 3 days. But the one thing I would like people to be doing is to be taking that branding idea forward and trying to ensure that the places that want to be centres in your country can actually achieve that branding, can actually get there, and will be part of what I hope will become a global movement. I think, Lauren, is it at the back there?
Yeah, we have some time for some questions.
No, there we go. So first of all, I have a statement. So to Walter and SPAGN, I want to say thank you. Because when we started talking about this, we spoke about the Center of Excellence and the countries that weren't as privileged to have those and whose health systems didn't allow for those voiced their concern. And there was almost I want to thank you because you stopped, listened, and amended things. And I can tell you that I belong to a number of global organizations and global networks, and this is one of the first that has stopped and changed policy to include the rest of the world and what the majority of patients face. So I think that is a huge, huge, huge feather in your cap, and I want to thank you, Walter, for spearheading this, because I don't think we find anything else like this from a global patient coalition that has taken all the patients across the world into account. So thank you very much for that.
I think we have time for one more question or comment.
I had a question. So maybe it's the next part of your project, Walter, and we can give it to you. Is how do we look at creating something that can capacity build and capability build those networks and centers that are one. So if they've got a red, how do they change that red to a green? Is there not partnerships that we could look at trying to help them to do that? Could it be, courses that their nurses could do so that they become sarcoma specialists, or you know what I mean? Is there something in the works that we could look at helping those people or those facilities that want to have more green on the list?
Yeah, I think that is one of the next challenges, how we actually pull that together. Before I actually go further into that, Lauren, can I just say thank you to you for your inputs into this process, because you've been very clear. You haven't been campaigning, you haven't tub-thumped and haven't waved, you've just been very calm and very presentational, which I found incredibly valuable. I've learnt a lot from you, so thank you for your input. So a little round of applause for Lauren. Yes, built into the recommendations, as you will see, is the concept of learning. I don't think any network, any professional group can call itself intelligent if it's not a learning environment. So that it's implied in the title and it's specified in the document. Now, what does that mean for the professionals? It means there are structures. They self-train. They train by drawing in specialists from other countries on fellowships and internships and secondments. They send their own professionals on fellowships into other countries where they can learn, and there's plenty of scope in America and in Europe for such fellowships. They happen organically already within Europe, so there is absolutely no reason why they can't happen involving people from outside Europe. And in fact, they do. I know they do. It was great fun talking to Professor Judson, who's now retired, from the Marsden a couple of months ago when he went to New Zealand, and two of the oncologists that he worked with in New Zealand when he went out there for 6 months were ones he had trained at the Royal Marsden. So that kind of thing goes on, and we need to encourage it, in fact, help it grow. And then the other thing is belonging to professional organizations and going to professional conferences. And I'm not suggesting that every CTOS would have 5 people coming from every country, but if one person came, 1 year a surgeon, another year a medical oncologist, another year a radiation oncologist, another year a pathologist, but if an individual comes to ESMO, if an individual comes to CTOS, an individual goes to ASCO, and they learn and they share their learning with their colleagues when they get home, that is all a key part of the process. As well, I know that there will be difficult cases which they can identify as difficult cases beyond their experience, and they want advice from someone with more experience. And we know already there is a whole network of sarcoma specialists across Europe and the USA who are prepared to share their expertise in that kind of way. The opportunity to learn through that route is another powerful one. Catherine.
If I may add on to this, because you know that our official collaboration we have with CETOS is also something where we have an opportunity to feed this kind of input in, and we did. So Bernd Kasper, who is unfortunately not here anymore, but he is heading the outreach committee at CETOS, and for last year we gave in the idea to have some, fellowship grant programs. And they adopted that, and it's going to happen again. So it's an opportunity for specialists or to become specialist doctors to be part of CETOS. And just for your information, there is some things going on that we can do already and are doing.
And just to add emphasis to it, we had a meeting with some of our sponsoring industrial companies 2 days ago. And we actually mentioned to them, we talked to them about this concept, and we said to them, what we would like you to be doing is sponsoring oncologists to go to CETOS or to go to ESMO, so that the learning curve is facilitated by the industry as well as organically within the system.
Okay, yeah. Just maybe an idea for the follow-up, because as Lauren said, like capacity building will be so important, to be able to implement eventually in the medium and longer term this kind of idea of a sarcoma intelligent specialist network. So what if once the paper is published, the member organizations here all over, they will go through the checklist and over the time, of course, like see where are the bottlenecks in their countries and give us the feedback on where do they have particular problems or what would they need, so that it's just like a first collection, so that one eventually could come to let's say a practical list of to-dos that then SPAGN and other organizations could promote or have a project.
Well, you're spot on, Gabby. I just want people to feed back to us. Anything and everything, anytime, because we'll note it, and it is going to be a living document. There's 20 pages of it, for heaven's sake, but it's going to live.
Could I make a comment? You're probably aware that obviously MDTs at a specialist center already do some slightly informal outreach work. It may be within their country or internationally. For example, in Newcastle, because our lead is originally from Trinidad, we occasionally have a little link up with Trinidad, which is interesting because the team there has to get up in the middle of the night for sort of timing-wise. But they have difficult cases which are discussed, and it just seems that that could probably be developed a bit further. Obviously, members of our MDT get a bit nervous about too much of that happening from the point of view of resources, as usual. But I think that could be developed further, along with the pathology, as we know that already we have digital pathology. So you don't need the specialist sarcoma pathologist to be physically in that center. The pathology lab, as long as they have capability to process the tumor specimens and make the slides, at least there's a start point there. So I think those links could be further developed, and as usual, of course, it's the financial resources. Perhaps, I don't know, the commercial partners can help with that. That's obviously the limiting factor, but there's a huge amount that could be done in that area, I think.
Thank you, Kenny. Yes, I think you're right. To some extent, we have to step back and allow the professional world to recognize that it can organically do things which we can only talk about or observe. But the fact that you do it, and I know that, for example, Sanjay in Glasgow has tremendous outreach, and I know that the Birmingham MDT has a lot of outreach as well. And knowing that this is going on is something that we actually need to develop. We need to understand it a bit better. It may well be that some sort of, I don't know, what would you call it, central registration of that kind of less formal activity, becomes practicable. But it really would need to be CETOS, perhaps, or a junction of the national societies, like, for example, the Italian Sarcoma Group, the British Sarcoma Group, the German Sarcoma Foundation, an alliance of them recording this sort of thing and carrying it forward. Maybe it's something that will happen organically within the community. I hope it does.
Does anybody want to share a comment or an idea or ask a question?
Stunned silence.
I think everybody is absorbing everything that you have said, and you might be flooded by the questions on your email.
Yes, I think you're right, Vandana. Yeah. The trouble is that I've been living so close to it for about a year now, and it's deep-rooted within me. But it makes it difficult for me to get perspectives on the level of detail I need to impart. But it's been a very interesting project to work on, and I think I have some fairly clear ideas.
So we know that we have an advisor. If anybody in any country wants to start a special center, the preliminary doubts can be cleared with Roger. I have your permission to say that. And then we can work on it and, make it a really good project and make it a project where every member of SPAGN gets involved. Can I say?
You may. I regret saying that, but you may.
So can we close the session? Thank you very much for being here and listening to this. And thank you, Roger, for the wonderful insight. And I know that we've been talking about it for a long time. And hopefully it'll all come through and your review will be done. And soon we'll have some centers. The success will be if we have centers in India. That would be my point of success.